18:24 through 30, and 36 through 43. Jesus presented another parable to those who gathered. The realm of heaven is like a farmer who sowed good seed in a field. While everyone was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then made off. When the crop began to mature and yield grain, the weeds became evident as well. The farmer's workers came and asked, "Did you not sow good seed in your field? Where are these weeds coming from?" The farmer replied, "I see an enemy's hand in this." They in turn asked, "Do you want us to go out and pull them up?" "No," replied the farmer. "If you pull up the weeds, you might take the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until the harvest, and then at harvest time, I will order the harvesters first to collect the weeds and bundle them up to burn, then to gather the wheat into my barn." Then Jesus left the crowd and went into the house. The disciples also came in and said, "Explain the parable about the weeds in the fields." Jesus answered, "The farmer sowing the good seed is the chosen one. The field is the world, and the good seed are the citizens of God's realm. The weeds are the followers of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is in the end of the world, while the harvesters are the angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned, so it will be at the end of the age. The chosen one will send the angels who will weed out the realm of everything that causes sin and all who act lawlessly. The angels will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But those who are just will shine like the sun in the realm of God. Let those who have ears to hear this."
How many of you like tomatoes? I love summer tomatoes. Tomatoes that you find in December and January might as well stay in the grocery store if you ask my opinion. Tomatoes, the seeds, their bounty. They are amazing, tasty fruit or vegetables or whatever way you want to call them. They're still very tasty if you ask me. A little more than a decade ago, George and I built a box garden in our lawn. We got the cedar boards, we put the netting underneath so ground animals could not burrow up. We did all this hard work. We filled it in with good soil. We planted it, and we went most likely back to Lowe's for something else. And as we came home, it began to rain. And as we parked in our driveway, torrential rain poured from the sky. And as we sat in my car looking at our beautiful box garden, it began to fill with more and more water. And the next thing we know, to one side, the water began to rush over the side, taking all the small seeds we planted lovingly right out into the grass and down into our flower garden. Luckily, some seeds did grow in the box garden, but not as we had arranged, because Mother Nature had reoriented them. And then the seeds that might have grown in the grass were mowed under, because I cannot stand a weed or anything that's not a grass blade. But I'm not always so wise. If you'll bear with me another story, when I was much, much younger, many decades ago, a preschooler, I went out to pick my mother some flowers, beautiful yellow flowers of late spring, early summer, for it was in the South. And I gathered all these beautiful yellow flowers and carried them in and presented them to my mother, expecting great praise. My mother had the look of shock on her face, for the beautiful flowers that I had picked were none other than the yellow blossoms on tomato plants. So I don't think I would have been called the evil one who went out to pick, but let's say tomatoes were quite barren that season. Today, we are presented in the gospel a story of seeds and weeds, going out to plant the good, and then supposedly an evil one comes in and plants weeds everywhere. Well, honestly, I think weeds are just part of nature. The harder we work, they find another place to grow. But often we confuse the weeds with everything that's bad in the world. Sometimes preachers make the comparison that we here gathered might be the good seed, while everyone else out beyond us are the weeds. Well, I don't think it's that simple myself. Perhaps you do, but I think we have to think about the world where seeds and weeds all grow together. What I love about the parable early is that the good one, the gardener, tells those who are out in the fields, just leave the weeds and seeds. They will grow together, and in time we will find the good harvest. But as I said just momentarily ago, we have to be careful about the weeds, not to judge them too early for what bad they might be. For as much as I hate to say it, sometimes it's the weeds that hold it all together. They hold the soil together so it will not all wash away with the young seeds that go overflowing from our garden beds. Are the weeds that sometimes have the longest roots, which are irritating, but they hold it all together. For we live in a time when we shouldn't worry about separating the good from the bad, the flavorful from the unflavorful, those we like and those we dislike, those who are different and those who are just like us. We live in a world, and especially a time, when God calls us to let the seeds and the weeds grow together. Can you imagine weeds in your summer garden? Now, I must confess, back in spring, one of you asked me after worship, would I like to come and help weed in their garden? Jokingly, I said, I'll pass. But the thing is, it wasn't that I was so pious thinking the seeds and weeds and flowers and weeds all should grow together. I just don't like pulling weeds. But the thing is, my friends, we should let God's love, for God's love is more bounteous than any seed and more bounteous than all those weeds. And my friends, we should let God be God and be the God of seeds and weeds and puts us all together. For God's love is deeper than any weed can grow and is brighter than any tomato that can come about. For it's in the fruit. As we said earlier, when we cut the tomato open, there are the seeds. And the seeds are the promise that even not in our best dream conditions, that the love of God will take root and the weeds and the seeds can grow together. For my friends, if we are the weeds and seeds, we should be growing together. not waiting for something to come burn out what we don't like or judge less, but to imagine, as in the Wisdom of Solomon, which isn't in our Protestant Bibles, unless it's in the Apocrypha, which some traditions will have. It talks about the love of God, or the justice and judging God, to be much milder than we imagine. Perhaps we know that God will not necessarily grab all the weeds up as we'd like and burn them, but lavish them in love for what they can bring and for what the seeds can bring and what each one of us can bring if we nurture what grows among us. For we must be the nurturers of love. We must plant love where we go. We must be those who plant justice. We must be those who speak up when the rest of the world is yelling to do something else. We must remind the world that we must grow together, or we will all perish together. For we can see it in the environment in which we live, where it gets hotter each summer. We set records in heat. For if we don't work together to save our environment, to create places where weeds help in meadows to receive more carbon dioxide, if we plant things together and plant the love that naturally grows in the grace of God, I believe that together we can be the weeds and the seeds, and knowing that God's love is rooted much deeper. And we will let God be the God of seeds and weeds. Amen.